this is just one of the most bizarre stories I have ever heard of. A healthy 47-year-old man from New Jersey, he just suddenly died. Suddenly died 4 hours after eating beef. So let's go ahead and go to this video here. This is what happened. If you get bit by a tick, it's called the Lone Star tick. If you get bit by that, it can actually trigger an allergy in you to red meat. And then if you eat red meat, you can die. I mean, this is just mind-blowing. It is called alpha-gal syndrome. And again, out of nowhere, a 47-year-old man has now been identified as the first person to abruptly die just 4 hours after eating beef. We have a doctor joining us right now, Dr. Rabia De La Tour. She is with NYU Langone. Doctor, are you with us?
Yes, how are you?
Thank you so much for joining us today. This is the most bizarre story. So in a nutshell here, and as you know, really dummy this down for us, what is this syndrome and how does it work?
It is a bizarre syndrome, and it's kind of a new syndrome. It was only really first described in 2007 from scientists at UVA. So basically, what happens is you get bit by a Lone Star tick, and this tick essentially sensitizes your body to a very specific carbohydrate that's found on mammalian meat. So that's lamb, pork, and beef, and sometimes even some dairy products. And then what happens is you end up eating that meat again at a later date because you've never really been told or noticed that you had any sort of allergy to these mammalian meats before. And so the tick bite essentially gives you this allergy. And then you have meat in the future, or again, a dairy product potentially, and you develop symptoms of allergy, whether it's a rash, some people have nausea, people have also described significant abdominal pain. But in this case, what was really concerning is it's the first case of anyone ever dying from what they think is anaphylaxis from repeated red meat exposure, specifically in this man. Okay. So it's the first death from alpha-gal syndrome or ingestion again of red meat that you've become allergic to. And it's the first case of what they think is anaphylaxis from meat ingestion.
Where you just find it, you stop breathing. You can't breathe. It's like with a nut allergy or an egg allergy.
Yes. So again, this man, what happened to him again was was diagnosed after he passed away.
Right.
And so he had basically gotten a bunch of what his wife described as his chigger bites on his ankles one summer. He had steak at a camping event and became severely ill 3 hours after eating that meat. 2 weeks later, he had a hamburger at a picnic or barbecue, and he died that day, or died shortly after that, because they essentially sensitized his body and he had worse and worse allergic reactions. When he died, they didn't know what caused the death. And so he was basically diagnosed as having unexplained sudden death. And then people who tested his blood and his body after his death postmortem found that he had a significantly elevated blood test of something that can basically tell you if someone has mast cell activation or severe allergy. So they're deducing from this information that he had alpha-gal and he died from anaphylaxis.
Now, if he would have had an EpiPen, obviously he had no idea that he had this allergy that was triggered in him by this tick bite. But if he would have had an EpiPen, would that have saved his life?
Potentially. So a lot of this, again, we're this conjecture. We don't know. We weren't there. I wasn't there. And so if he was having typical symptoms of airway closure from an allergy, then yes, an EpiPen could have saved his life if that's what's thought to be the exact cause. But,
Okay.
it's kind of a deduction based on postmortem labs. And so there's a lot of question marks here.
Right.
But typical anaphylaxis, yes, can be treated with an EpiPen to try and help save somebody's life.
Okay, and you're talking about some dairy products. Can you tell me what those dairy products are that can also, if you eat these, that you could also die from this tick bite because it triggers this allergy to some of these products?
So what we know again from alpha-gal syndrome and patients who have it is that they need to avoid mammalian meats. But because, some dairy products are derived from mammals, from cows specifically, they're told to avoid dairy products as well to avoid, again, this trigger, the sensitization and allergy
Mm-hmm.
to any items that come from a mammal. So that's where the thought process is.
Okay, okay. Why is it called the Lone Star tick? Because the moment that I heard that, the Lone Star state is Texas. Was that the first case or something, or is that just a coincidence?
Yeah, I don't know exactly why it's called that. I think it's because it has some sort of, pattern on its back. I don't know why the tick was named that specifically. That's a great
Right.
question, but we're seeing most of the cases on the East Coast.
Oh, oh, really? Most of them on the East Coast? How many cases have there been?
I don't know the exact total of how many cases there have been, but we know that it was first described in 2007, so a rarely new disease.
Wow. And so, okay, because it is new and we're hearing about it, and this is really going to be mind blowing for a lot of people because it's going to be brand new information. And one more thing that we all have to worry about. But what are some symptoms that people can look for? Because you're saying the first time that he ate meat, he was somewhere at a family gathering or something like that, and he got sick, and then it happened again, and it was the second time when he sadly passed away. So, what are some of the symptoms people can look for?
Absolutely. So you want to look for typical symptoms of allergy after you ingest red meat or any sort of mammalian meat. Again, that can be lamb, beef, or pork. And once you have it, you can have typical allergy symptoms like a rash. Some people develop nausea, other people can develop vomiting, and then severe cases, they can have significant abdominal pain that happens a few
Mm,
hours after eating this meat. And now, the reason why we don't know exactly how many people might have had it is because if you were to go to a party and have, or a restaurant and
mm-hmm.
have some meat, and then a few hours later you have significant abdominal pain, you'd assume that the food was not of good quality or that it was infected with something.
Right.
You wouldn't think you're having an allergic reaction to the meat itself, which is why we think alpha-gal is probably underreported and
Okay.
estimates that there may be as many as 450,000 Americans currently who have actually been exposed to the Lone Star tick and might be sensitized to alpha-gal and might have alpha-gal syndrome. But again, we don't know the exact numbers for a reason because most people will assume it's some type of food poisoning if they're vomiting after eating, not
Okay.
necessarily an
So
allergic
now that
reaction.
people are hearing about this, because now we're going to see it everywhere on the news, and people are going to see it on TikTok and on X and Facebook, people are going to be talking about this. If you do have beef and you do get sick, should you automatically go to the doctor? I mean, real quickly, because we're going to be running out of time here in a second. But should you go to the doctor right away or a clinic?
I don't think it's unreasonable to seek medical attention, whether that's in the form of a phone call but if you're having severe symptoms and you're not sure what's going on with your body, it's never wrong to seek medical attention.
Okay, all right, terrific. Hey, Dr. Rabia Delatour with NYU Langone, thank you so much. We appreciate your professional opinion and information on this and your insight. So thanks so much.